You wake up early, make your coffee, and face another day like it's just one more task on your never-ending list. But deep down, something is broken. There's a tiredness that doesn't go away over the weekend, an exhaustion that not even deep sleep can erase. You do what needs to be done. You work, you reply, you deliver, but inside you're just surviving, as if you were trapped in a body that keeps moving on autopilot while your mind screams in silence, "I can't take it anymore." And the cruelest part? Almost no one notices, because you keep smiling, keep being productive, keep saying everything is fine. Burnout doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly. First comes the physical fatigue, then the irritability without a cause, then the loss of interest in the things that used to inspire you. You begin to forget appointments, to withdraw from loved ones, to see your job, the one that once gave you purpose, as an unbearable burden. And yet, you go on, because culture taught you that stopping is failure, that resting is laziness, that admitting vulnerability is weakness, so you keep pushing until you break. Maybe you're there now. Maybe you're about to cross that invisible line between exhaustion and collapse. Maybe you crossed it long ago and no one noticed, and you've learned to pretend, to hide, to blame yourself for feeling this way. But today, right here in this conversation, I want to give you something perhaps no one has ever given you before. Permission to stop, to breathe, to admit that things are hard. Because burnout is not a personal failure. It's a symptom of a sick society. And you don't have to become sick to be accepted by it. Today we're going to talk about that. About the kind of fatigue that hurts. About work that drains you. About the body that warns. And the mind that resists. We're going to talk about how all of this can be recognized, treated, transformed. Because you are not a machine. And you were not born just to produce. You were born to live. With truth, with purpose, with health. Burnout isn't just being too tired. It's not being overly sensitive or dramatic or lazy. It's a deep state of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion caused by prolonged exposure to chronic stress in the workplace, especially when the demands of that work exceed what the body and mind can realistically sustain. The World Health Organization recognizes burnout as an occupational syndrome, and yet thousands of people live with its symptoms every day, without realizing they are getting sick. Burnout settles in like a silent ember, slowly consuming you from within. It starts with small signs: morning fatigue, lack of motivation, body aches, insomnia, irritability, memory lapses. Then it grows. You become apathetic. You feel like the joy of living has slipped away. The job that once gave you a sense of purpose now feels like a prison without windows. You become cynical, discouraged, emotionally drained. And the cruelest part? You start doubting yourself, feeling useless, believing you're failing, when in reality you're resisting a system that is breaking you down. It's not like occasional stress which comes and goes. Burnout is permanent, it's corrosive. It doesn't go away after a weekend off or a long holiday, because it's not just physical, it's existential. It erodes your identity, your sense of worth, your self-esteem. You start to wonder, am I still good at this? Or why doesn't anything bring me joy anymore? And these unanswered questions pull you into a dark place where everything loses its meaning. And it's important to say, burnout doesn't only happen to people who are too busy. It also strikes those who feel their work lacks meaning, those who are trapped in toxic environments where they're never recognized, those who carry enormous emotional burdens, like teachers, healthcare workers, caregivers, leaders, those who try to be strong all the time, until they can no longer hold up their own armor. Recognizing burnout is the first step to breaking the cycle. It's admitting that you're exhausted, and that this exhaustion has a name, has a cause, and has a treatment. And most importantly, it is not your fault. You are experiencing emotional exhaustion in a world that demands results, but forgets to honor your humanity. And now, you can begin to rebuild yourself, with more truth, with more balance, with more compassion for yourself. We live in an era where productivity has become a badge of honor. Working late, replying to messages outside of work hours, stacking one shift on top of another, all of it has been romanticized as a sign of competence. Those who don't have time are the ones who are winning. Those who never stop are the most dedicated, and so we've been swallowed by a twisted logic. The more you deliver, the more is expected of you, and when you collapse, the blame still falls on you, because somehow it seems like you just couldn't handle what everyone else can. the performance culture turned work into an extension of identity. It stopped being just what we do and became who we are. In this silent process, we traded our worth for our output. It no longer matters how we feel. What matters is what we deliver, as if our existence were tied to goals, spreadsheets, KPIs, performance reviews, as if rest were the enemy of success, as if stopping meant failure. And it's so subtle is that we often don't realize we're trapped. We say, it's just a phase. Once this project is over, things will get better. Just one more push. But the project ends, and a new one begins. The phase passes, and an even more demanding one takes its place. And that just one more push keeps piling up until it becomes irreversible exhaustion. A weariness that's not just in the body, but in the soul. Because when you live only to produce, you forget how to live to feel. This logic also fuels toxic competitiveness. Co-workers become rivals. The workplace becomes a battlefield. No one can appear weak. No one can say, I'm not okay. We wear a mask of strength while we collapse inside. And in that environment, burnout stops being the exception. It becomes the inevitable result. But the truth needs to be said, even if it hurts. You were not born to be a machine. You weren't put in this world to hit targets, to reply to emails at 3 a.m., to spend more time with your computer than with those you love. You were made to live with meaning, to build something that nourishes you, not something that devours you. And if work has become a prison, maybe it's time to break those bars. Not with rebellion, but with awareness. You have the right to seek a new rhythm, to redefine success, to choose balance instead of exhaustion. And that is not weakness. That is wisdom. Before collapse, the body screams, but we don't listen. Or rather, we hear it, but we ignore it. Because we're so conditioned to function on autopilot that any warning sign becomes an inconvenience. Constant aches? I must be sleeping badly. Irritability for no reason? Just a rough day. Racing heart, insomnia, memory lapses, fatigue that doesn't go away. Normal, right? Everyone feels this way lately. And so, we silence the alarms of the body like someone snoozing a persistent alarm clock. We know we need to get up, but decide to delay a little longer. Burnout never arrives without warning. It sends signals, small, repetitive, progressive ones. At first, it's a lack of motivation, that heavy feeling when you wake up, even after a full night's sleep. Then comes apathy. You start losing interest in things you used to love. Joy fades, and what's left is an emptiness that you try to fill with more work, more tasks, more productivity, as if by doing more, you could avoid feeling what's actually going on. But the body doesn't lie. You begin to turn into someone you don't recognize. You forget important appointments. You lose patience with the people you love. You overreact to small setbacks. You can't relax even during leisure time. And even when your body stops, your mind doesn't. It keeps reviewing emails, anticipating pressure, rehearsing apologies. It's like you're always on high alert, even when there's no threat. These signs, often labeled just stress, are actually your body trying to save you. Trying to say, look at me, I'm at my limit. But instead of listening, we respond with caffeine, more overtime, and promises of vacations that never come. We ignore it. Because admitting we're exhausted still feels like weakness in a world that glorifies endurance. But the body doesn't negotiate. It warns, 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 until one day it stops. And when it stops, it's no longer optional. There's the breakdown in the office bathroom, the panic attack before a meeting, the emotional blackout in the middle of a conversation, and you realize, too late, that your body was only trying to protect you from what your mind kept insisting on enduring. Maybe today is the time to do things differently, to stop ignoring, to start listening again, because burnout can be prevented, but only if you listen, and your body deserves to be heard before it has to scream. Collapse doesn't announce the day or the hour. It just happens, sometimes in the middle of a regular meeting, sometimes in the elevator, the car, the office bathroom. It arrives like an emotional blackout, a sudden drop in vital energy. As if the mind pulled the emergency brake and said, enough, I can't go on. And the body, which had been holding on for months, maybe even years, simply stops obeying. The tears come uncontrollably, your thinking falters, breathing tightens, and for the first time, you feel in your very skin what it means to break on the inside, while the world outside keeps demanding your presence. That moment is devastating, because everything you built, the image of efficiency, the armor of productivity, the tireless persona, collapses. You can no longer pretend. The unsent email, the delayed delivery, the meeting you missed, they all turn into guilt. You start blaming yourself, calling yourself weak, useless, someone who just couldn't handle it. And that thought is cruel, because it ignores the truth. You didn't fail. You endured beyond what was humanly possible. Emotional collapse is, more often than not, a desperate cry for help from your unconscious. It forces you to stop, and in that forced pause, reality hits like an avalanche. You are unwell. You are at your limit. You lost yourself trying to meet expectations that were never yours. You crossed every line for goals that don't nourish your soul, and at that point, everything feels confusing. You feel anger, sadness, fear, shame, all at once. You feel small, vulnerable, exposed. You feel like you've lost control. But here lies the turning point. It is precisely in this collapse that the possibility of healing is born, because only when everything breaks can we begin again, from scratch, without masks, without pretending, without the rush that got us here in the first place. The truth is, no one should have to reach this point just to be heard. No one should have to get sick in order to be allowed to rest. But if that's your reality right now, if this is what you're living through, please, don't blame yourself. Instead, look at this collapse as a sign that there is still life inside you, because those who collapse did so because they fought, because they endured. And now they need care, they need to be heard, they need compassion, not judgment. You are not alone, and what you feel is valid. Now is the time to stop, to breathe, to begin gently, to rebuild, to stop, to rest, to breathe. Simple words, but for many they sound like a threat, as if the mere act of slowing down meant losing something, a position, respect, an opportunity. And maybe you feel that too, that if you stop now, someone will pass you by. That if you say, "I can't," people will call you weak. That if you take a vacation, they'll realize you're replaceable. And that's where guilt is born, a silent, corrosive guilt that eats away at you from the inside. The guilt of being exhausted and still believing you don't have the right to rest. But that guilt isn't yours. It was planted by a society that glorifies urgency, by corporate cultures that measure worth in output, by the voices that say success is only for those who never stop. So even when your body begs for relief, you convince yourself that rest is a moral weakness. But the truth is different. Rest is a right. It's a biological necessity. It's a pillar of mental health. A burned-out mind doesn't create, doesn't solve, doesn't love, doesn't feel. It merely survives. And the body, when deprived of rest, begins to fight back. Your immunity drops, the pains return, emotional breakdowns come, and a deep existential void creeps in. And still we push on, because we were taught that our value lies in what we do, not in who we are. So stopping feels dangerous, as if the world will forget us, as if without productivity, our existence loses meaning. But let me tell you something with all the tenderness I can offer. You don't have to prove yourself all the time. You don't need to justify your fatigue or hide your exhaustion. You are human, and humans need rest, need to disconnect, need days when they produce nothing but silence and self-care. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Quite the opposite. It's in that pause that you recover your most valuable treasures, your health, your clarity, your presence. Resting doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you'll see that productivity without health is an illusion, and success without balance is a cage. You have the right to stop, to care for yourself, to place your life, not your job, at the center. That's not failure. That's maturity. That's self-love. There's a kind of grief no one talks about, a grief that doesn't come from losing someone, but from losing purpose. A hollow space that settles in when the work that once brought fulfillment becomes nothing more than a cold, repetitive, crushing machine. You walk into the same environment every day, complete the same tasks, deliver the same results, but inside, you feel like something has died. Maybe it was the spark in your eyes, maybe it was your motivation, maybe it was you, lost in the effort to fulfill a role that no longer makes sense. This is the grief of burnout. A silent grief, disguised as efficiency, because on the outside everything still works, but on the inside something no longer moves, no longer connects, no longer inspires, and it hurts. It hurts deeply. It hurts because you may have built your entire life around this work. You studied for it, dedicated yourself, dreamed about this profession. You invested time, energy, relationships, and now you feel nothing. What once was a life project has become just an obligation. And that disconnection, even when quiet, is devastating. Maybe you try to convince yourself it's just a phase. Maybe you tell yourself, I'm tired, not unmotivated. But deep down you know you're trying to hold on to something that no longer nourishes you. You know you're dragging yourself forward out of fear, out of the need for stability, out of others' expectations. You know you've lost your passion, and you're not sure if or how you'll ever find it again. And this is where we need courage. Courage to face this grief with honesty. To recognize that you don't have to stay in a place that makes you sick just because it once made you happy. That changing your path isn't betraying your story, it's honoring it. That starting over, even in fear, is sometimes the only way back to your essence. You don't need to love what you do every day, but at the very least, you shouldn't be getting sick because of it. You need to feel alive. You need to feel that you're moving towards something that holds meaning, that has value, that carries soul. Work can, and should, be a source of dignity, but it should never be the graveyard of your feelings. If today your job feels like barren land, know this: you can bloom elsewhere. You can change, adapt, find new meaning. And even if you can't leave just yet, you can begin to care for yourself now. Begin to rebuild from within. To remember that you are so much more than the title you hold or the goals you meet. This grief doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of a life with deeper meaning. Healing from burnout doesn't begin with magic formulas or quick fixes. It begins with a quiet but profound decision, recognizing that you're not okay. And that, in itself, is an act of courage. Because for a long time, you were taught to ignore it, to endure, to stay silent. You learned to pretend everything was fine while everything was falling apart inside. But there comes a point when the body can no longer lie, the mind can no longer bear it, and the heart can no longer hide. And it's at that point, exactly there, that you can begin the journey back to yourself. Accepting that you need help is not a sign of weakness, it's a gesture of wisdom. It's saying, I'm done just surviving, now I want to live. Reaching out to a therapist, scheduling a psychiatric consultation, talking to someone you trust, opening up to those who can support you. These are small gestures with enormous power, because burnout, though it shows up in the body, is born in emotional silence. And only through listening can what was repressed begin to heal. Psychotherapy is one of the most powerful tools in this process. It not only offers professional support, but it helps you understand how you got here, what beliefs you carry, what wounds you try to hide behind productivity, what boundaries you never learned to set. And slowly, with patience and care, you begin to recognize yourself again. You learn to separate who you are from what you do. You start to realize that rest is not a waste of time. It's an investment in life. In many cases, medication may also be necessary, and that's okay. Your brain needs balance to function, and there are times when your body needs biochemical support to reorganize itself. Don't blame yourself for that. You're not dependent. You're taking care of an imbalance that gradually made you sick and now needs to be treated. Medication doesn't erase who you are. It helps clear the way so you can reconnect with your true self. Beyond that, seeking support communities, engaging in activities that bring you genuine joy, restoring connections, rediscovering forgotten hobbies, creating small rituals of self-care, all of that is part of the healing process. There is no finish line. There is a daily restart, a conscious choice not to abandon yourself anymore. You don't have to carry it all alone. You don't have to prove that you're strong all the time. You're allowed to fall and be held. You're allowed to cry and be heard. You're allowed to ask for help and be embraced, because you deserve healing, and you deserve to discover, maybe for the first time, what it's like to live with lightness, without having to destroy yourself just to be accepted. After so long trying to survey at the edge, it may seem impossible to imagine a lighter, more balanced and healthier routine. But believe this, it is possible. And it doesn't require a revolution. It requires awareness, consistency, and above all, kindness toward your own pace. Burnout doesn't appear overnight. And in the same way, healing is built step by step. Small daily actions, applied with intention, can become shields against exhaustion. And when practiced consistently, these habits become pillars of a new way of living. The first strategy is setting clear boundaries. Saying no is not selfish, it's self-care. Learning to end your workday on time, to avoid replying to messages after hours, to decline demands that stretch your emotional capacity, all of this is about protecting your mental health. Remember, people learn to respect you to the extent that you respect yourself first. And well-defined boundaries are bridges to healthier relationships. Another essential step is building a routine of conscious breaks, real scheduled pauses where you can breathe, reconnect, be present. Between tasks, take 5 minutes to stretch your body. Look out the window, sip water slowly. Place small anchors throughout your day that remind you you're human. This isn't about non-stop productivity, it's about sustainable vitality. Organize your routine realistically, with achievable tasks and reasonable goals. Perfectionism is one of the most common burnout triggers. Avoid overloading your schedule. Prioritize what truly matters. Use simple tools like physical planners, basic apps, or visual to-do lists. Seeing what needs to be done helps lift the chaos from your mind and place it somewhere manageable. And whenever possible, celebrate small wins. Every completed task is a victory over exhaustion. Take care of your body too, it is your internal compass. Balanced nutrition, quality sleep, and regular physical activity aren't luxuries, they're therapeutic pillars. Movement helps release accumulated tension. Rest restores mental clarity. And food nourishes not only the body but emotional stability. You can't heal from the inside out if you keep treating your body like a disposable machine. Practice what we call emotional hygiene. This includes journaling, psychotherapy, and talking to someone you trust. Bottling up unresolved feelings is like piling up emotional trash. Eventually, it overflows. Learn to name your emotions, to accept hard days without guilt, to respect your natural rhythm. We are not meant to be okay all the time, and that's okay. Finally, reconnect with what gives your life meaning. It might be an art form, a spiritual path, a personal project, a hobby, or a simple act of kindness. When life gains purpose outside of work, work loses its power to consume you entirely. And that's when a new cycle begins. One where you not only avoid burnout, but build a life that's truly worth living. As much as self-care and personal responsibility are essential, it's impossible to talk about burnout without addressing a crucial point. The environment you work in matters a lot. It's not fair to place all the blame and burden of fragile mental health on the individual when so many corporate environments still operate as silent factories of burnout. Companies that prioritize metrics over people, leaders who confuse authority with pressure, cultures that normalize exhaustion, all of these fuel the invisible epidemic of burnout. The truth is, the problem doesn't always lie with the person who breaks down. It lies in systems that turn productivity into currency for acceptance, in managers who see employees as parts of a machine rather than as human beings, in organizational cultures that glorify being workaholic and silence emotional pain. And until this changes, burnout will continue to be a consequence, not a flaw. Leaders have a defining role, because the tone at the top shapes the entire team's environment. A leader who respects work hours, values breaks, listens with empathy, and doesn't turn mistakes into humiliation, creates a space where people can grow without breaking. It's not about softening everything. It's about humanizing. It's about remembering that lasting results come from emotionally healthy people. Goals matter, yes, but lives are non-negotiable. Companies urgently need to invest in mental health policies, psychological support programs, compassionate feedback, sustainable workloads, training on empathy, inclusion, and active listening. They need to break away from the culture of never-ending meetings just a little longer, and if you can't take it, you don't belong here. Because those environments don't build strong teams, they build silent armies of burned-out professionals who one day simply stop. It's also time to rethink what success means inside an organization. It's not just about who delivers the most, stays the latest, or works the hardest. It's about those who collaborate, who know when to stop, who seek balance, who create emotional safety for their peers, who respect their own limits, and in doing so, teach others to do the same. If you're in a leadership position or in a space of influence, understand this. You can either be part of the healing or part of the cycle. And if you're an employee who feels your company doesn't listen, doesn't care, doesn't support, maybe it's not that you're too sensitive. Maybe you're just trying to survive in an environment that still hasn't learned how to be human. Companies are not made of walls or job titles. They're made of people. And when people get sick, the entire structure gets sick with them. At some point in life, we all ask ourselves, what am I doing here? Not just at work, but inside a routine that consumes, in goals that don't touch the soul, in obligations that distance who you are from who you wish to become. And when burnout sets in, that question gains a deeper tone. Is it really worth continuing like this? That's the point where many people see pain, but also opportunity. Because as much as collapse may break us, it can also wake us up, call us back to life, to purpose, to the meaning that got lost. Redefining your relationship with work doesn't mean giving up everything. It doesn't mean quitting on a Monday. It starts first by making peace with your story, with the path that brought you here. It's looking at your professional journey and saying, I did the best I could with what I had. It's recognizing that you went too far trying to carry it all, and now with kindness you need to change direction. Maybe that means adjusting your routine, setting new boundaries, saying no with more certainty. Maybe it means having a conversation with your manager, negotiating your schedule, asking for help. Maybe yes, it's time to consider a new career, a new project, a fresh beginning. But what matters most is that from this moment on, your work should serve your life, not the other way around. You weren't born to be consumed by tasks. You are not an extension of your ID badge. You are not the sum of deadlines met or nights sacrificed. You are someone who feels, who thinks, who dreams, someone who deserves to live a professional life with emotional dignity, who can and should seek balance between what you do and what you feel. Redefining also means learning that success doesn't have a fixed definition. Success might be having time to eat lunch slowly, to pick your kids up from school, to take a deep breath before a meeting, to sleep peacefully knowing you did your best, and that it was enough. Success isn't perfection, it's alignment. It's when what you do is in harmony with who you are. And if today you feel like you've lost that, know that you can get it back. You can start slowly. You can rebuild new meanings. You can transform work from a prison into a bridge toward a life that feels more authentic, lighter, and more true. Because in the end, what matters most is not how much you produced, but how much of yourself remained whole. And that is what truly matters. You've spent too long trying to fit into a mold that was never made for your soul. You tried to speed up when everything inside you begged for a pause. You tried to smile when you were barely surviving. You tried to give more, do it all, be everywhere, without ever asking, and me, where do I fit into all of this? But now, maybe it's time to stop. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because there's a line between effort and self-destruction, and that line is your life. You are not a machine. You weren't born to perform, to produce, to operate. You were born to feel, to grow, to make mistakes, to rest. You were born to live a life with truth, not just a packed calendar. And if today your body is tired, your mind overwhelmed, your heart disconnected, listen. Listen before it's too late. Listen to the whisper of your soul asking for a new beginning. Taking care of your mental health at work is not a luxury. It's survival. It's the foundation of a dignified existence. It's the choice not to abandon yourself in the name of goals that don't belong to you. And as hard as change may be, nothing is more dangerous than continuing to ignore your own limits. Because no one can live for you. No one can decide for you. You can right now take one step. The step of putting yourself back at the center of your own life. Seek help. Ask for support. Talk to those who love you. Rethink your path. Tear down the belief that only those who endure everything are worthy. Because pushing yourself until you break is not bravery. Bravery is looking within and saying, I deserve more. I deserve peace. I deserve health. May this message remind you of something you may have forgotten. You are not your productivity. You are a life in progress, and you deserve to live with truth, with meaning, and with compassion.